And good afternoon, and welcome to It's No Secret in memory of Tyler Matthews, live from the Aired Out podcast located right here on Main Street in Barrie in the Fly on the Wall production studio at 185 North Main Street. And today's show is presented to you by Yipes and Barrie, Yipes, Barrie and Bevins, where we can get our shirts lettered up, any apparel imaginable. I just got some really nice jackets from them that are absolutely amazing, waterproof, just really nice stuff. Letter your business, windows, signs out front, sandwich boards, cars, you name it, they can do it. If it needs a graphic, Yipes is the place to go. So today I have a special guest here with me, and I think we're both a little bit. Well, I'm nervous because this is only my second show, and you are a little bit nervous because this is going to be your first time really discussing your story to really tell your story, and I'm very blessed and honored that you are willing to do that here with me. So welcome, Michael Deering.
Thank you very much for having me. And I really feel like this is a blessing and an opportunity to really talk about things that are no secret, that are going on in our communities that really affect every one of us in a direct or indirect way. And today really will be the first time that I've kind of publicly shared my story with addiction. It's definitely not easy to talk about, and definitely was not something easy to talk about earlier in my days of recovery. But now it's a bit easier, but there's also that stigma because, well, I'm a city councilor.
Right. But with that, you are a city councilor. So in my mind is I'm a city councilor. Look where I've been.
Yep.
Listen to where I've been and look where I am now. And proof that it can happen. You can dig yourself out of the trench and realize your own potential, because that's what happens with a lot of people that are struggling in addiction, is how they feel about themselves and their self-worth, and being able to pick yourself up. And sometimes many times you pick yourself up, you brush yourself off, and you try to move on and realize that you do have potential and there is a spot for you. And we are fortunate enough that your spot you found right here with all of us, because you bring great things to this community.
I try my best, and I think that without the experiences that I've had in life, I wouldn't be in the place that I'm at, or be able to talk about them in the ways that I can. And I'm not saying that I don't still struggle with addiction, because as an addict, whether you're recovering or using, you're going to fight that battle every single day.
Your whole life.
Yeah.
Your whole life.
Yep. So it's been about finding better coping mechanisms, and as well as going to therapy weekly for, 5-6 years with the same guy.
Yeah. Which is, so for you, where did it begin? Where is it, like childhood stuff? Or
so we'll start off with the typical, honestly, is that I worked my tail off literally through my mid-20s. I found some pain relief in narcotics and opiates. It was Oxycontin and Percocet, Vicodin, those types of narcotics.
Originally prescribed?
Yes. So they were originally prescribed, and they helped with the pain. So at that point I could work, and it wasn't an issue. And working 50 or 60 hours a week in the restaurant industry puts a lot of toll on your body. So really just being in constant pain turned into using those medicines more than I needed to. And essentially it gave me a high. It got me numb from life and from the reality of
Right.
of the world.
Pretty soon it fixed not only just the pain that your body was feeling, but that your mind was feeling, that
Yes.
you literally felt deep inside. And so you learned two things: that it could make you get through the workday with your body not hurting as bad, but it also helped you get through the workday because it healed something or numbed it for a moment so that you could go on and concentrate on what you needed to.
Yeah, essentially it was a Band-Aid to mask the things that I really didn't want to deal with. We, as people in society, our bodies inherently gather things, the energies, shall we call them, in life. So the things that you've experienced as a child, the things that you've experienced as an adult even, can leave scars. And no one's scars are better or worse than anyone else. That's something I've been reading about in a book called The Myth of Normal. That's one. It really talks about inherited DNA and inherited trauma and how we try to mask the traumas that we've had in our life and fill those voids.
And it's really important for people to know that everybody deals with traumas differently. Some people might find to dive super deep into their jobs and be totally consumed by that. Some people might smoke cigarettes or eat candy, or that we all, no matter what, we all find something that makes our hurt feel better.
Yep.
And some of us just find it in more dangerous ways. And some of those ways were found medically.
Well, I think we escalate. To me, I escalated really, is that I did do the work thing. From my early 20s, when I had decided that college at that point wasn't for me, I jumped into the workforce. I worked a full-time job and a part-time job to keep myself busy, and also kind of did the partying thing like a young 20-year-old does, with the drinking and the staying up late, and just continued to work. I was a workaholic. But then at some point, I found something that helped me to fill that void even better, with the medicine, which at that point then became a real problem. But I didn't see it as a problem. I saw it as a way that I could get through my day without having to be pissed off at the world, without having to take out what's going on me to someone else, and to kind of be numb through the day and just get it over with. I hate to say that I didn't really have a focus or anything necessarily to look forward to other than, all right, I'm going to get up tomorrow, go to work.
So where did it take you? You start out where you're using it at work. Where did it actually end up taking you?
So it took me into a really bad place. It took me into a place where I was actually doing a couple 100 milligrams of opiates a day. I would wake up and snort some opiates in the morning. I would have another cocktail of such at 11 or so, and then different periods throughout the day to keep me numb and to keep me at a level where I could focus and function. And it was difficult. And then I found myself friends with a dealer, which made it even more easy to
Right, it's accessible.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, then the accessibility is there. And so you're young, family at that point?
No.
Or even thinking of that at that point? Or are you just thinking, I'm going to work and play hard?
That's it. I was just thinking, I'm going to work and play hard, because I didn't have family in mind. I didn't have any children. I did have some girlfriends on and off. But again, with that lifestyle I was leading, it really wasn't anything serious.
Depression? Did you struggle prior to, or was it more of a pain thing for you?
I think that I didn't ever really struggle from depression per se, because I've always had an upbeat and relatively optimistic personality. Even on my, and I'm trying to be cordial in my words, but even on my shitty days, I try to find the silver lining in things, because that's just whom I am and whom I was raised to be. That's just my foundation. So that foundation that I built as a child was always still there. So it actually helped keep me from kind of straying too far into some other things.
Right. So you stayed just on the edge the
I
whole
stayed
time,
just
pretty
on
much.
the narcotics of the Percocet and the Vicodin. Heroin was starting to become prevalent, and this was 10 years ago when I was really facing my worst adversity, where there were times when we couldn't get the pills from wherever we were getting them from. So some people had suggested, oh, why don't you just, I can get you some heroin. That's cheaper. It's better. And thankfully, my mindset was always that, well, heroin's one of those, you got to use a needle and you got to shoot it up. And thankfully, I was very sheltered per se, even being an addict, that I didn't know that you could snort heroin.
Right.
Because if I had, I'd have probably jumped to heroin. Just because it's another opiate narcotic.
Right.
But
I didn't know those things either, so I've slowly learned the same with cocaine or several other things that you can smoke them and not just snort them. And cocaine smoked is crack
Right.
instead of, but I did not know all of those things either, and I think it was the time that we grew up in, and certainly cocaine was a thing, but more mushrooms and marijuana when I was growing up, because I'm way older than you. And so back then that was the thing, and,
Right.
and alcohol, of course. But even those things are super dangerous and can lead to a road that you definitely don't necessarily need to go down.
Yeah, addiction can be anything. I mean, if you are addicted to going to the gym, if you're addicted to a diet, if you're addicted to a podcasting,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
literally
all about
anything.
adrenaline.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
It's filling that void, and that's what I did with the working. I filled that void with just busting my ass as much as I could in the workplace, to the point where I constantly rose above and got management positions because I worked harder than the other people.
So when did you decide to, okay, I need to stop this and I need to be well? And did it take you more than one try?
So that's a lot of questions, and that has a lot of answers to it. So I'll unpack the first one of really where the road, crossing the road came, was that my current wife, and my only wife, just so we're clear, I say current, my wife Cassandra, her and I were engaged. We were pregnant with a child, and she had made an ultimatum to me. Granted, we weren't together for very long, but she kind of knew what I was into. But also, we kind of all knew what was going on, and we also knew that would have to end.
So your family knew. People in your family, your immediate.
Well, I would say that my
knew?
parents were relatively in the dark. I think my dad's watching.
Yes, he is.
He is. And my dad, I would say that he's not dumb, so he probably knew that I was using and selling narcotics. My mom, she's not dumb either. And my sister, we all have a similar addiction personality. We have that gene trait where addiction is much more susceptible than some others.
Well, and as a parent, I think we all want to believe not my kid at first. I mean,
Sure.
that's a super tough thing to swallow, and to say, okay, because it takes a lot of reflection of your own, just because you constantly, at least I am, what did I do wrong? What could I have done different? How can I and then you want to fix it because you're the parent.
Sure.
You want to, what am I going to do to help them be better? Get off of this stuff and just to save my kid.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So my parents didn't we didn't ever talk about it. I'm sure that there was definitely some talk about it even before I got started doing anything. So there was kind of like a previous aura that was definitely not true, but then became true. The only people who really knew were the individuals that were in my circle and my significant other. And at that point, I'd just come into being in a relationship with my wife, Cassie, and she had 2 kids, coming into the relationship. So she kind of made the ultimatum that it's either this or that. And I really decided that, well, you're right, that these 2 children and you are much more important to me than this addiction and this road that it's led me down. And it really was a bottom of the barrel type of situation where, everything that you have around you is gone. And you have to look up and say, God, save me. And to me, that really is a big thing, is that, I made that choice. And that really was the choice. The ultimatum was that I can either choose to have a family or not. And yes, to answer your next question, have I struggled? Abso-fucking-lutely. You bet. Especially in the first couple of years of sobriety, even in the last, I would say, 5 years, that I really struggled with it, with even going in and finding stuff, not telling her. And she knew, and has called me out on it as well. So, there's definitely that aspect of the recovery stage where you're going to fail several times before you succeed. And me and my therapist talk about this all the time. Why me? He is a recovered alcoholic. I am a recovered opiate addict. Why me? Why, do I continue to better myself? And why did he, better himself?
Well, and that's part of the process, is being able to step back and accept the fact that you are worthy of being well. You're worthy of having a life beyond the addiction.
Right.
And some people really, really struggle with that part of it. They're not able to find what it is in them that they find worthy, because I don't know about you, but in many people that I have met, they say their biggest struggle is finding love for themselves, because through the addiction, they've grown this hate, and it's that they hate what they're doing, but in doing that, they grow a hate for themselves, and then they just feel like, okay, I'm really not worth this wife and this family and this career that I have.
Sure.
And that is what keeps them a little bit backwards. And I mean, did you ever feel that way at some points, like, this isn't going to work for me?
Yeah.
I can't do this.
Confidentially on the air.
Yeah, on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know my wife's watching. But yeah, there were many times when I really had to dig down deep. And thankfully, I have a therapist who's taught me that I need to connect to my higher power. But it's also one of the things that helped me, and I only attended a handful, but some AA or NA meetings where a buddy of mine who I was selling opiates to, we were getting clean together. And he kept harassing me, come to a meeting. I'm like, Josh, I don't need to come to a meeting. He's like, no, Mike, you do. Get your ass to the meeting. And I went to a couple, and I started to understand what their concepts are, and get to a meeting. If you're struggling, get to a meeting. It's amazing the connections that you can have at a meeting with other people who are struggling. But it puts you in a better place. So it's that higher power that you have to connect to, whatever your higher power is. I'm not going to preach, but to me, my higher power is the Lord Jesus Christ. I know that when I'm at my worst, he always sees value in me, but he also, through him, all things are possible. And something that really stuck out to me is that there's a group out in Johnson, not Genesis Promise.
It's Teen Challenge.
Teen Challenge. They came to my church, Bible Baptist, a couple months ago, and their women's group put on a presentation. And I was just absolutely amazed. I actually was in tears through most of it because of just the willingness and the work that they're doing. Because you have to find something that is greater than you to get past addiction.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily need to be religion or
Right.
God or
Yep.
church. You just find what works for you and
Yes.
you run like hell with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If it works for you and it's good and it's positive, then roll with it. Because too often, as an addict, you roll with the negative. We're constantly talking about who you surround yourself with. And that was also a big change when I decided to get clean, was the people, places, and things. I didn't associate with the same people. One of the people I did actually continue to associate with, but he ended up in federal prison. And just recently, after being incarcerated for 9 years, and yes, 9 years in federal jail, finally got released for selling opiates.
You and I have spoke about him
Yes.
because we were looking for some place for him to transition, and I was
Yes.
trying to help you with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he had to actually go to Portland, Maine, for a place to transition from the Correction Institute. But that could have been my road. Had I not stopped when I stopped, it's very likely that I could have been in prison as well. Because we make those mistakes. And again, why me?
Any experiences that scared the shit out of you? I mean, was there ever a time where you almost overdosed, or was just in a really shitty situation where you knew that that maybe you didn't even remember the next day?
So I'd have to say that, have I overdosed? I'd say that, maybe once I would say that I overdosed, but it really was more just puking and just not feeling very well. Where I had such a high tolerance after many years of use, and we weren't in the day and age where people were mixing fentanyl into this stuff, where this stuff was coming straight from pharmacies and whatnot.
Right.
Not coming, stomped from Mexico and with fentanyl and this is 10 years ago, where things have changed so dramatically.
Very dramatic.
So, it's possible that, I had an overdose at one point. And then this was definitely before the Narcan, and I didn't pass out or anything like that. But it was very similar to one time somebody suggested I try some Bupe, which is the opposite of narcotics. And I was jonesing for a fix, and I tried a little tiny bit of that, and I was sicker than a dog for about 12 hours. But
Lessons from that, or not really?
no, I don't
Just
think
don't
so.
do that again.
Just,
Not that one.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if this were nowadays, and I had known, or if there were, issues, and I hate to say if there were, product issues, if I had an overdose, and had like the EMS called and things like that, you bet that would be a huge wake up call. And I think that to me, that would have even been a better wake up call, where it might have saved me earlier in the whole process to realize that, whoa, what I'm doing is a problem, because I kind of normalized it, as well as the individuals that I worked with, because they were also using. So it was kind of a normal situation.
So Cassie has the baby.
Yep. So
You're both young.
Cassie actually lost the baby.
She lost the baby.
Cassie lost the baby. We ended up not getting in a house that we were supposed to get. So we ended up living in a motel for a couple of months until we landed in an apartment, which actually ended up being in Barrytown.
So you went through you went through some pretty
We went
rough
through
times.
a situation where we got behind on a car payment because the job that I'd had, being a multi-unit restaurant manager, just didn't work out. There were some legal issues with that that was found to be thrown out. So I was dealing with that. Then I went to work for a pizza delivery company that I'd worked for before when I first moved back to Vermont, and then fell behind on my car payments. So they came to repo my car at 11 o'clock at night while we're living in a hotel. I ended up driving away with the gentleman on top of my car.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it got bad. It got really freaking bad. But in the midst of all of this,
It got all lifey.
well, my wife really was my rock and soul there. Like, she was the one that was always there. We were always there for each other.
Like, let's take a breath. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And keep going.
Yep. And we got a place out in Graniteville, which was kind of nice. A change of pace. The Chittenden County thing just it wasn't working, and it also helped to change some of those people, places, and things. So if you move to a new area, you don't know who to contact to get drugs.
Right.
I mean, you could probably ask people, but you're also likely to be confronted with, well, what the hell you want drugs for?
Let's talk people's places and things for a second.
Yeah.
It can leave you in a super lonely world when you are so used to having many, and all of a sudden you have one or none. It can be really lonely.
Yep.
And lonely can make the fight
Worse.
that much greater.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, really, so we'll just talk about the point in time when I stopped providing opiates to others. My phone went from ringing all the time for people wanting things to dead silence, radio silence, essentially. As soon as I said to people, look, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to get clean, the circle got very small, and essentially included my wife and my 2 children. And that was really, I think, the focal point that I needed to get better and to know that, wow, all of these people that were around me,
that were my friends.
Yeah, my friends.
Yeah, your so-called friends.
Ones that will, oh, hey, if you need anything, I'm here for you. Well, no, really, you're just there if you want drugs.
Right.
It's not that you want to be
You're
my...
here for what I can get for you,
Yes.
and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the case in a lot of friendships over a lot of things. I mean, it just is that I think that it's a good thing for all of us, whether we're addicts or not, to realize that our circles are small. And you may have a lot of acquaintances, but you truly only have a few friends.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of things.
Yeah, that's truth right there.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes down to it, you have a handful of individuals that you really do call your friends. And those are adult words, really.
Yeah.
That as an adult, you have many acquaintances, but you have very few friends. and really because you want to surround yourself with good people, who don't just have their best interests at heart, but are also willing to go and bend over backwards for you when you are in need.
And it's super important. So where do we go from there? We go from the hotel to Graniteville.
Graniteville, yeah. So we go from there to, I'm still working on recovery. I'm still trying to be clean. At that point, I've had some criminal charges because I had driven with that guy on top of my car. So gross negligent, or was it gross negligent operation, simple assault, leaving the scene of an accident, and one more, I think, which got thrown out. So I did some probation. And part of that was also to take an anger management assessment, because they felt that I was an angry person because of what I did. Little did they know the circumstances around that, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
So there are consequences when you break the law, as there should be. My friend went to jail for selling drugs. Well, he should have. I had to go through all these processes because I did what I did. Excuse me.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, you get it.
I do.
You do the crime, you do the time. And that's just it. So, and part of that was that I had to take an anger management assessment. And through the Office of Probation and Parole over here on Main Street, I was referred to this gentleman named Chris Sloan. He is a private practitioner out of Montpelier. He is not taking new clients, just so you guys are aware. He's on his retirement days.
Yeah.
But I had to go and take an anger management assessment. And after the first session, he's like, yeah, you don't have anger issues. You have something else.
Yeah, you have other issues
You have
we're
other
gonna
issues,
work on.
but they're not anger issues.
Right.
So really working with him, he opened my mind to something called adverse childhood experiences. And also has driven my career path at this point, where I'm studying to become a trauma therapist. Because for so long, I masked all of the issues that were going on with everything but really dealing with them. Because it's easier. It's easier to mask them and to, that's not me. But once you start to deal with them, that's where recovery really can happen.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to go find opiates when I'm having a really bad day, there are coping mechanisms or coping strategies that my therapist has taught me that allow me to relieve that stress and that anxiety. And I'm not saying that I don't have bad days where I just want to rip someone's head off, but the ways that we're able to cope and manage everyday life, as well as the things that have happened to us in the past, and also this other book I'm reading called "It Didn't Start With You," talks about inherited trauma through DNA, where DNA can be passed, or trauma can be passed with women in 3 generations and with men in 2 generations. So things that your great-grandmother had experienced can be passed down to you.
Right. Super interesting.
It's mind-blowing.
I'm going to start a spot on the page, on the It's No Secret page, where we can actually recommend books and different resources. I started posting some resources, but I want to start to make that available. And what I want people to know is that it's super important that as a parent, as a friend, as a community member, that you get involved and you dive into those resources just as much as the person struggling does. That is so important. It is so important to acknowledge and to educate yourself on every bit of it that you can, because that's just, this addiction, substance use disorder does not discriminate.
No.
It can be anyone. It can happen to anyone. And so I really want to start sharing as much of those resources as possible. So make sure that you
One of the biggest things
pin
I
them.
want to say right now, there's a website that I was referred to, acestoohigh.com. Do you know about that?
I do.
Okay, so acestoohigh.com. So, and as you know, that website is just full of resources. And it's amazing that once you start to look at ACEs and how childhood trauma can create PTSD in people, which also mask the same symptoms as ADD and ADHD, which are at this point, I think it's like 1 in 3 or 4 children are diagnosed with attention deficit or hyperactivity. And if we really were to think about it, maybe it's trauma.
And when you say that, we should be specific in saying is when you say that, when we don't always mean the parent. We're not saying that your trauma happened at home. It was all your parents' fault. That isn't the perception that we want people to have, because you're not blaming anyone.
We don't want
You're
any
just
blame.
saying that this is a piece of my life that I didn't process or deal with right. And it could be as something as minor as literally I fell out of a tree and I got hurt or I got lost in the woods, or somebody was bullying me at school.
Yeah.
There's some things that people process way different than others. And we're not saying that when you say childhood trauma, you're not saying, oh, my upbringing was terrible and I had this horrible life. That's not what you're saying. And I think it's important for people to know and understand that there are little pieces of life that we all experience. It's life.
Yep.
And how we process them is not the same.
Right.
It's impossible for us to process them.
We're all individuals for a reason.
Right. And so that it could be bullying. We all know that is a huge problem, especially now in our schools and with social media. And I mean, I'm so grateful for social media because it means that I can do this with you.
Right.
But there are so many evils to that, and it brings our kids so much traumas in life, whether we know it or not. And so, but I just wanted to make sure that we were making it clear that you're not like beating the hell out of your parents or your family life or your, we're not saying that at all. We're just saying, you're saying that there are traumas in life that can bring you here. And
absolutely.
That you can,
a car accident.
Right.
I mean, anything. And yeah, your upbringing has some to do with it, but it doesn't have everything to do with it. I mean, even the choices that you make as a teenager can still affect that. And there are also things that are beyond your control that can be traumatic for you. And really, PTSD is more so that your body just can't let go of the trauma and process it.
Right.
And until you can get rid of or process, then you're going to try to find something like addiction. Addiction.
Yeah.
It's that nasty, don't say it word.
It is.
But it affects every one of us. And if we don't work with it, if we don't try to better ourselves, it's just easier to get high.
Now, when you decided, I'm not going to do this anymore, and you had the full support of Cassie, and which God bless her, thankfully, she was willing to stick it out and stand by you and maybe crack the whip a little bit, as well as be supportive and understanding of your situation. You're delivering pizzas.
Yep.
You're trying to keep things afloat, and then you have another child, right?
So we were gonna have another child, but all of the stress caused Cassie to have a miscarriage. And I think that everything happens for a reason. But we did end up having a child a couple years later. When personally, I feel like we were much more prepared for it.
Yeah.
The stresses in life just caused her body to say, you know what, right now is just not the time.
Still super hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Still super hard.
It's very traumatic to go through. And my heart hurts that you had to go through that.
Yeah, and for it to be my firstborn child, I was very excited. And it did bring a lot of excitement. But the chaos in life, it was interesting and caused that effect. And then we moved to Graniteville. Things were definitely not the easiest. I had my license suspended because of the points violation, because in that particular instance, one of the charges carried a point total that equaled a 1 year or a 6 month suspension to my license. So at that point, we're up in Graniteville. I'm unable to drive. So I'm essentially walking to Panera, taking the bus down by Dollar General, trying to get rides and whatnot. Just trying to fight my way out of that hole that was dug. And knowing that I had 2 kids and a wife at home that needed that support. And that really has been my driving force behind it, is knowing that she and them, they depend on me. And it definitely can put added stress, but if I focus on the stress in the right way, it keeps me paying the bills. It keeps me doing positive things in the community. It keeps me on the, and I don't want to say straight and narrow, but really on the better path to successfulness.
Why politics, Michael? If if stress is a trigger,
It's not anymore.
right?
Why politics, though?
Why politics?
There are many reasons. One of them speaks to a conversation that I first had with another elected official, who I will remain nameless, because I'm not trying to talk smack about anyone. If you want to figure it out, have at it. But I met with a lot of people when I first was elected last year in March, because I wanted to hear what people had to say. I met with you guys. So this particular elected official really had no idea about addiction, no idea that we
I'm
really
not surprised.
had an addiction problem. And to me, when I saw that there was this issue in our community, and that we had people that really, to me, weren't voicing the everyday concerns of people. They were voicing the concerns of, we need to increase the tax base, we need to get more people to move to Barrie. Well, how about we listen to the people that live in Barrie? How about we work on the things that we have in Barrie? And that was a problem for me, with having 4 children in the community, being a football coach and a vice president with BYSA football, just being involved. I was like, you know what? I need to take an active role. I'd served 4 years with Head Start as their school board president previously. And I just saw that there was a big void in everyday people serving our community. And no offense thrown to those that are elected to council or to the mayor. But realistically, I am a people person. I love people. I want to hear what people have to say. I engage with our community. And I feel that we, as elected officials, aren't engaging enough with the public to know what they want.
Amen to that.
I mean, I think we're pandering too much to labor unions and to other groups within the community, and not really focusing on how we are going to make Barre better together.
Together, keyword.
Together.
And that means understanding everyone that lives here and all of the community, whether it be pretty or not.
Yeah.
That we are here, we're whole, and we need to find a way to make us whole somehow. As a councilman, what do you feel that we could do as a city to help to push us forward?
I think that there are a lot of things that are going on in our community. I think one of the things we need to do is have some empathy for individuals. I think before I started this journey on recovery, I used to have this mentality when I saw somebody on the side of the road begging, and I was always yell something like, "Hey, go get a job," or "Hey, you want me to go get you a job application?" And I've changed that mindset because I don't know their story.
Right.
I don't know anything about them. But what I do know is that they're in a situation that's probably not ideal. And they're
struggling.
Yeah, they're struggling. So we need to have empathy towards other individuals. I think that we need more support for those who are struggling. But I also think that we need to crack down on these drug dealers. I live in one of the Barre Housing Authority communities, which will remain nameless because I'm not on here to shame anyone or anything, because this is something that we need to know. It's not a secret that people are dealing drugs in our communities, and essentially are being slapped on the wrist and being sent out to go deal more drugs. And that starts with who we elect as our state's attorneys.
Right. And we have to make that clear. It truly comes from that level.
Yes.
Because even our law enforcement, their hands are tied.
Oh,
they
my
can
goodness.
they can make an arrest. They can cite someone into court, and what happens after is out of their control.
Yep.
And so it's shitty that law enforcement really takes it hard. They take the beating a lot when it comes to the crisis here, because I think that they are aware. They, I think that they try, but I think that just like everything else, there have been so many obstacles put in their way that they're not allowed to do their job anymore.
Right.
And so while I really feel it's important that we move forward in life, there are some aspects of it where we might really strongly consider going a little backwards. And that would be one of them. First, I would love to go backwards a little bit. I'm not saying right now, child abuse, no, I don't want people beating the hell out of their kids, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But there is a lot to be said for kids that were raised with discipline that was allowed in schools, and because it gave you respect. It gave you respect for law enforcement. It gave you respect for your elders.
Yeah.
And not a lot of that exists anymore.
We have a different culture.
A very different culture. And then I feel like that's how we get trapped in this position even a little bit, is that, I don't give a shit if I hurt some drug dealer's feelings. I'm sorry.
Yep.
If you came here from Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, wherever you came here and you're doing this, damn straight, I'm going to say horrible things about the fact that you're some out-of-stater that came to my city.
The same thing about the people that are letting them stay in their apartments.
Right, exactly. that is a huge problem, and it's a huge problem that somebody like the housing authority, they need to buck up and do something about that.
Well, and that's something else I'm working with how is the housing authority, but also their hands are tied, from my understanding.
Right, because of who we elect, the government, and what they're allowed to do.
And the policies and procedures that are put into place, and how you can evict someone, and all of these things. Yet when you see somebody who has no children, who is living in a public housing unit, or
has no children because the majority of them have been taken away because of their lifestyle,
right,
in many of the cases.
And really, those are 2 apartments in the community I live in, that if they were to be removed, you could put some other families in there, and it would also curb some of the problems.
And we're not saying that they don't deserve help.
Right.
They need help. They just need to be taken out of that situation where they are continuing to cause direct harm to others, and they knowingly are causing direct harm to others.
And I think that's the key, is that the difference is that when you are knowingly doing it versus when you're trying to get help, people are really quick to play the, I want to get help card when you get caught doing something. But until you get caught doing it, it's like, well, I'd rather just do it and then I'll ask for forgiveness later. So where do we stop forgiving and start, holding people accountable? And I think it started when Cassie said, look, it's either you're going to continue to use and sell, or your ass is out, and like, we're good. Like, you're not going to be in my children's life and my life, because, that lifestyle is unacceptable. And we make a choice, and we make those choices every time. So if I had said to her at that point, you know what, pound sand. I'm going to continue to get high. I'm going to continue to do what I want to do. I'd face another situation where there's some adversity. And at some point, you're going to face that adversity, whether you're locked up in prison for 10 years like my friend Jose, or whether you're, trying to find a place to stay, because every apartment you've lived in, you've been kicked out of. Every job you've worked at, you've been fired from. You can't drive because your license is suspended. I mean, it's a rabbit hole that are continual choices. You don't just wake up one day and say, whoa, how did I get here today?
Right. And that I guess that's the tough part for community members to understand, is that I hear it every single day. I see it posted every single day. It's a choice. Yep. They could stop. They could, they're choosing to have their life this way. And that's simply just not true. It's not a choice. And
I think it can be, though.
It can be. Yes, there are some in situations where it can be. And there are situations where we have people that are dealing that don't themselves use.
Right. Yep.
Those situations are far worse in my mind. Like, you can go right to jail for life as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because, I mean, as a user, if you're selling as a user, you're probably just selling to feed your habit. You're not selling to make money.
Right.
Any profit that you get is just going into your own stash. Bottom line. It's not, oh, hey, I'm doing this to get rich. No, I'm doing this so I can get high for free.
Right. And there are many people that come here or send their drugs here. They get people to mule them. Yep. Because they know they need to feed their habit. They're going to move this product for me, and I'm going to be sitting on my high horse somewhere enjoying all the luxuries of it.
I see it usually 2 days before the first of the month at Green Acre.
It's all right.
Where I live, and I also see it usually about 2 days before the 16th.
Yeah.
And also it's the same schedule, back 10 years ago. you get your stuff a couple of days before the first of the month. You get your stuff a couple of days before the 16th of the month. You all can figure out why that is. But, I see the plates come in from out of state.
Right.
And they leave. And then you see within those next few days the flurry of activity going on. And it's like you're talking about. You have those people who are coming in, dropping their stuff, and then you have the other people who are essentially dealing addicts, that they're feeding their problem, their situation, and I don't want to say don't know how to get out of it, because there are some that have been given opportunities to get out of it. But at what point do you decide it's just easier? And some people just say, fuck it, and give up. And I think we don't know necessarily where someone's at. And I think that as a councilman, having empathy toward people and not assuming anything, we're constantly talking about don't assume this, don't assume that. Well, you know what? Don't assume what's going on in somebody's life just because they're
Right,
using
you never
drugs.
know.
No, we don't know. Maybe that person's mom died yesterday, and you know what? They're having a really bad fucking day, and they just want to get high because everything else in the world doesn't matter.
Right. You don't know. So before we have to go,
Yes.
as a councilman, and what are your thoughts? I know that the naloxone boxes have started going up throughout the city.
Yes.
There has been one put up at Turning Point, one at the Women's Center, and I think at one of the stores here local. Are you for that? And do you think that we ought to start promoting maybe even store owners to keep Narcan in their first aid kits?
I think that Narcan is really important. We want to talk about having empathy. And regardless of someone's situation, like I talked about, maybe the kid's mom died yesterday and he went and scored a batch after he's been clean for a year and he overdosed. He, she, it, they just...
Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they've been actively using all along for the last 3 years.
Sure. But I think that to help people is our first response to humanity. That we as humans have a responsibility to each other to keep each other safe. If that means that we keep Narcan, that you've come across an individual who is overdosed, you use it. It's a tool that can be used in a toolbox. And just like my father told me, is that it's better to be prepared for a situation than to experience it, and then not to be prepared and then to experience it. So I think it's important. I also believe that you can go to the pharmacy and pick up a prescription for it for free. No questions asked, I believe.
At some, yes. They have not all joined on with that, but there are some, yes.
I think it's important. You give someone an opportunity, and thankfully, I never had to experience that route of being overdosed and having to be Narcaned and come back from that. But I would hope that it would give some people the realization that, wow, my life just pretty much ended, and I should probably change around what I'm doing.
Yeah.
More accessibility, I think, is key.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us, and I hope you'll come back again. And
absolutely.
You have so much to offer, and I think that your position within the city is it's amazing. I'm super proud of you. I'm super grateful to have you, and I think that the community is lucky to have you, because there is a real person. Not that they're not all real. I mean, I have a lot of love and respect for several of you, but it's just nice to see that someone who has gone through a whole lot of crap was able to shine and bring that little bit of reality to government.
Let
I
me
wish we
just
knew more
end
of it.
with this, though.
I'm
It-
sure
it
there's a lot
humbles
more
me.
of you. I'm sure there's a lot more of you in
There are.
government, but not a lot of them are going to have the balls enough to sit in that seat and say so.
It was tough, but it's worth it.
Very proud of you.
Thank
And
you.
I thank you a million times. Thank you all for joining us again this afternoon. And please don't forget to like and share. And then if you would like to be a guest, or if you have something that you would like me to discuss, please reach out. And until next Tuesday, be safe, be well, and know that you are definitely not alone. Much love to you all.